Item 7C, presentation on the proposed 2018 bond issue, bond program. And Kenny Schwab.
Okay, I'm just going to touch base with the council first before Kenny comes forward. Just a couple of points for the city council and those in attendance this evening. What you have before you that was just delivered last Wednesday is the proposed general obligation bond package with the remaining projects that I would like to ask the council to consider as a part of the final package. The report that Mr. Schwab is going to talk to you tonight about includes projects that are still above what I would call the cut line, and those projects that unfortunately have fallen below the cut line. It's not because, as council knows, that these are not important projects. It's because the directive of the city council was to make sure that we keep the tax millage rate of 16.46 for debt repayment the exact same. In other words, this will be a no tax increase. And so we had to go through the painstaking process over the last 45 days approximately to reduce the package, which what was originally presented to the council was right at $285 million. And from that 285 and the three public forums we had, the cost of the projects, potential projects, increased to about $290 million. There were several additional projects. And what you have before you tonight is a package that is $222,070,000. Now, in order to meet the council's objective to make this a no tax increase / keeps the property tax rate the same, we need to get this under $211 million. So we're going to have to reduce this by just a little over $11 million. Unfortunately, in order to meet your objective, and the objective obviously with the public's made it very clear, they'd like to see a package that's a no tax increase in well. Now, the good thing is that with the city's ability to get secure grants, for example, through the efforts of Mr. Schwab in engineering and construction, we secured a $4 million grant to help with Olive from 61st to 71st. And so over the next 10 years, I feel very confident that through the STP program, the the Tiger program, as well as the President's initiative to rebuild America with infrastructure, there is the potential for us to secure additional funds, because approval of this package will allow us to have what they call the shovel-ready projects. And the fact that we have been to Washington several times to participate in the development of that public policy, I feel really good that we should be able to secure some funding, which if we do, it would allow us to focus on those projects that don't make the list. Or we can combine them, which would free up money from unnamed projects for engineering and construction to get some of those other projects funded. So it's exciting to see that if this should pass, there could be additional funding to help us, because our applications are always going to compete very strongly for any federal or state funds. So tonight, what I'd like to do really is four things. First is just make the announcement once again that we are having the final public forum before the City Council has to make the decision on the ordinance and the resolution deciding what's going to be in the package, and then calling for the election on August 28th. And then secondly, Mr. Schwab's going to give you a short presentation on what the package looks like. He's going to focus, and you're going to hear on historically what percentages of the packages that we've looked at. Obviously, streets is very important, but he's going to discuss the package. He's also going to talk a little bit about the importance of public facilities. I think that's a forgotten item. Remember, 82% of our total budget is personnel, and our largest resource to serve the public is our personnel. So therefore, having state-of-the-art facilities that meet those expectations to be able to do their job is very important. And there's $9 or $10 million in this package being proposed to help support our employees in the facilities they have to work in. And then the final thing is just to let the public know that after the public forum, probably the second meeting in May, you're going to have an ordinance before you to have you consider for first reading with regard to what that package is going to look like. So we're trying to continue to be very transparent about where we were, where we are, and where we end up. And so with that, unless there's any questions, I was going to ask Kenny to come forward, and then we want to hear from the council about their thoughts on the package, and then we can get ready for next Monday night. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate this opportunity. Understand that there's odds given on how long I will go. The smart money's on over. Let me just go talk about the important dates that we've had. As Mr. Spurgeon kind of alluded to, there was a special council meeting on Saturday, January the 13th of 2018, where we actually started looking at the program. The council actually took a look at that, and we were around $285 million at that point. We took a lot of input from that point, and then the next step was to go to the public. We met had 3 different public meetings on February the 22nd, the 26th, and 27th. And one of the most important things there was to gain the input from the public that may help shape this bond program. And what did we do with that information? We had our marketing firm, 6PR, pull together the comments from that point and actually gave us a public input report. And as we went through to try to eliminate and reduce this program, we listened to what the public had to say in those meetings, and we'll touch on that just briefly. Another important point at that time was the information that we gave to the public is what you see on the screens. It was basically a document, a spreadsheet that showed every project, the total, gave a brief description and a generic or a general name for it right now. The language might be slightly different when we go forward with the bond, but it describes the program. Also put it in 5 different propositions. We had the public facilities, we had public safety, we had quality of life, we had stormwater, and then transportation. One of the most important things was to trim this program back to, as Mr. Spurgeon said, that magical number somewhere around the $211 million. How do we get there? Mr. Spurgeon put together a city manager's ad hoc committee, if you will, a cross-section of some public citizens to help us reduce this program and also to input the questions and the comments that we got from the public. So on March the 27th, the committee met and went through the comments. We actually had a lot of comments where we ended up adding a few projects, increasing. So as we go through the spreadsheet, I want you to understand 2 main things. There's a cut line, which is kind of down at the bottom, and it will read proposed, like public facilities, projects removed from the bond program. So we're proposing to remove those. And if you look at the public facilities, the one that's in yellow, you'll see that 3 projects are proposed to be removed. Those are projects that are either deleted in its entirety from the first publication, the public meetings, or reduced the amount. So that's a reduction. If you look above that line where we have proposed public facilities, projects remaining in the bond program, and this is similar throughout each proposition, you'll see about 4 or 5 columns over off to the right-hand side, you'll see a little note. If that project was added or increased, we identified it and had a footnote. So you really have just 2 types here, either an increase through adding or some modification to the amount, or elimination, a reduction. So bottom line, in the program that we presented to the public back in February, we had Proposition 1, which was the public facilities, a total amount of $28,500,000, and it ranged at about 10%. Public facilities normally range about 10% or less through our 20-year snapshot. We went back 20 years, 1997, and took a look. When we had public facilities on there, 10% was about as high it would run. It would run a little bit less. So the original number that we presented to the public, as I said, was a little over 28 million. After going through and reducing and modifying, we're recommending at this point, what's in there is a proposed $24.3 million. So a reduction of 4.2 overall. Now moving down to the public safety. Let me back up. The public facilities is right at 10.9%. Moving down to the public safety, In February, we proposed about $30.1 million at 10.7%. After we've gone through projects we removed and projects that we've modified, it's at 20.6 million, which is a total of 9.3%. So that's a reduction from what we showed the public the first time of $9.5 million overall. Then the third proposition would be the quality of life. In February, we had a total proposal of projects of $29.1 million, which was 10.3%. And today, the proposal is at 18.75, which is at 8.4%, a total reduction of $10,350,000. Proposition 4, stormwater. There were only 2 projects that were reduced in scope and size, budget-wise, for a total reduction of $1 million. So we went from $15.25 million, about 5.4%, to $14.25 million. And you'll notice that the percentage is up to 6.4% because the total package is reduced to what Mr. Spurgeon had said, just a little over $222 million right now. Now, the last proposition is the transportation, the streets, the signals, traffic, anything of that nature. We had originally in February $178.37 million in that proposition for about 63.4%. Today, the proposal is $144.17 million, and it's at 64.9%. The reduction was $34.2 million. So the important thing here to note is the original program that was presented to the public was $281.32 million. Today, as Mr. Spurgeon said, we've reduced it down to $222,070,000. So it's a reduction of just over $59 million is the reduction. I think that one of the important things to note that Mr. Spurgeon asked us to do was compare to previous bond programs. A lot of the input that we received both in the citizens survey back in October, November range of last year, and then again at the public meetings, was we need to address the streets. We need to address the streets. So we went back and took a look at how have we fared in previous bond programs, specifically with the streets. In 1997, the streets were about 75%. In 2000, the street was about 72% of the total package. The more recent programs from 2000 on, the streets have actually been less than about 60%. So this will actually be the third largest transportation proposal on proposition in the last 20 years, and it would be the largest since 2000. So past 18 years, this would be the largest program that we've been looking at for transportation. The other ones, the public facilities, the public safety, the quality of life, and stormwater, they're all falling within a reasonable percentage that we've seen in the past when they were in the program. So I think the important thing to realize here is that through the citizen committee that we took input from and the input from the meetings that we've had, there was a little bit of addition. Specifically, I think one of the projects that was increased in scope would have been Aspen from Tucson, 121st South to Jasper. That's what was presented to the public in February. In those public meetings, the citizens said, you need to go further south than Jasper. You need to go all the way to the Indian Springs Sports Complex, widen that. It's creating a big traffic jam. So we increased that amount in the transportation program. Those were kind of the projects. There was just a handful of them, about 6 to 8 projects that we had increased. The increase was a total of about $10.2 million from the original proposition that we showed back in February. So at this time, I'll be happy to answer any question, or I can go into more detail if you would prefer me to.
Any questions of Kenny or comments or detail?
Just a question of clarification, Kenny.
Yes, sir.
If you go back to a couple of questions.
Sure.
The proposed public safety projects, the fire station that you've moved down to remove from the bond program was a new fire station to replace an existing fire station. Is that right?
In the public safety proposition, what we actually presented to the public in February, there was actually three: a fire station 1 replacement, a new fire station, which may have been like a fire station 8, and then a future identification, like maybe fire station 4, because it's aging, so maybe we need to address it. When we went through the committee, we kept 2 of them in there and took 1 of them out. Took the new fire station, which would be fire station 8, I'm assuming. We went ahead and took that out, and that 7, sorry. I can't count. Put that below the public, the cut line. So hopefully that answers your question.
Then that would put that fire station that was taken out, which fire station? 7 and 8, that's kind of confusing to me too.
We took a new fire station, whichever, if it was going to be 7 or going to be 8, we took it out. And we kept 2 fire stations in there. We kept fire station, well, actually 7 is stays in there, but 8 comes out. That's the new fire station. And 7, if you'll remember, we actually have, I believe the land, this is, it's at Washington, across from Arrowhead. We have purchased the land, but we need the construction money, so that's what this one is. And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just real quick, Councilman, is the Ludwig study that we did a couple of years ago talked about where the city stations should be, and we also talked about the fact that we have existing stations that need to be replaced. And in the initial package, we looked at 3, and then we looked at the bonds and how they would be issued. And we have a commitment to build a new station or replacement station 7. Because council authorized the buying of the land at the intersection of what I'd call South Main and Washington, right there. That's one. And then the other station we left in there, as Mr. Schwab said, was really it could be an 8th station or it could be a replacement station number 1. We really want to make sure we have 2 stations in the package so we can look at the growth of the community. The chief believes that there's a need for an 8th station up by the training center if the growth there continues. Or there could be a need to replace Station 1 instead of moving up to Station 8 and put a new station up in the northwest part of the city. But we definitely need 7, and then we need 1 additional station, either a replacement or a new one, in the next 10 years. And then we should be able to provide the coverage within the community, but to have a 3rd station in the next 10 years, based on everything we see, we think if it was an 8th station, we'd cover that area. Then when we came back in another package, one of the first projects would be, like Mr. Schwab said, replacement for 4. That would probably be something the next time we go to the voters, we're going to need to replace 4.
Okay. Well, I knew it was talking about one in the northwestern. I knew it was talking about one on County Line that we bought the property for, and then the one that's to be built next, the one on across from the softball complex. Excuse me? And so I was just wanting to make sure I knew which ones were still in there and out.
The voters have approved the replacement station for 3. Council is authorizing selling the land. GH2 has that currently under contract for the architects. We also have some preliminaries for Station 7 with GH2, thinking positively that the voters will approve that in the package, and then we'll have to look at the issuance, looking at how we'll go about issuing, because you can see you're looking at about $5.5 million, and the first couple of years of the issuance are lighter, but by the time we get Station 3 completed, the goal is to hopefully get those plans and specs done, and then be able to sell those bonds, and then rock and roll with the replacement Station 7.
Okay, thank you.
And so my question, and you answered my question, I just, for clarification for the rest of the council and the audience, is on item 5 in public facilities. On the senior center, it shows $3.5 million to construct a new 5,000 square foot facility, which equates to $700 a square foot, which doesn't equate. So you replied it's 20,000 square feet. So you'll replace the language on that.
Correct. And just for the public, when we originally did this, we put a 5,000 square foot facility for the senior center. We actually hired an architect to kind of lay it out and meet the needs, do a needs assessment with them. And once we did that, the 5,000 went to 20,000 square feet. So you're correct. That 5,000 needs to be corrected in the comments.
Okay. and 20,000 probably won't be enough by the time it's done.
Probably.
Well, just one clarification on that is that what the senior folks, and Vice Mayor is on there, and I know another member of council are involved as well, is their plan is to realign their activities if the voters approve this, to where you're going to see a realigning of actually where they had their activities. Because, they have all of it in one place. So if we were able to go forward with this, then that new facility would allow them to have to accommodate current and to hopefully, at least for a while, to be able to accommodate the growth they're experiencing in memberships. And so we will have a protected light that will be able to walk back and forth across the street if necessary. But the plan is to build the parking lot and the facility and then the realignment so people could actually stay on this side of the road should they choose. And that was made instead of going out and looking at building a second facility, which would have added some additional operating costs, which really were not affordable.
And the parking lot would also be able to service
Softball.
the softball fields to the east of.
And that also gave them space for a future add-on, because they did, as you said, they wanted more square footage, some more space. I mentioned to them that maybe if we waited later, they could even maybe go to a two-story. And they liked that because that would give them twice as much space. So they're already looking for additional space, but they're very pleased with what they're getting from here, though.
And since you brought it up, I think one important thing to note for the public is in the one that was proposed back in February, we actually showed the land acquisition for the Senior Citizen Center in quality of life because it kind of did a dual purpose, but we've moved that up into the public facilities. So it's still in there, it just got moved, so if someone's looking for it, it's in a different proposition.
And that's the point I was making, is that land acquisition, well, it says for Senior Citizen Center, it would actually serve multiple
could.
purposes.
Correct.
Okay.
One of the things I wanted to mention to council is I sent you an email last week as I was stopping reflecting upon the actions of the council since I've been here. And I did that because the administration is asking the council to consider the 10-year package, and that's one of the decisions that you're going to have to make is, do we want to do the 10-year package or do we want to do something shorter? And I've always said that we've tried to be very forward-thinking in anticipating the projects that we believe will need to be done the next 10 years. That's why the package is larger, to be able to accommodate those needs. If you stop and think about what the council is working on right now, a couple of years ago, you adopted a tentative 10-year capital improvement plan for the utility department for the upgrade and the maintenance and replacement of all of your utilities, water, sewer, mainly. Secondly is that we're in the midst of updating our comprehensive plan. We're getting ready to kick off the update of our master plan for the Parks Department. The council has tentatively agreed to go forward and begin the process of exploring the creation of an innovation district in order to make sure that we have a facility or some type of area to attract those high-paying jobs that hopefully as folks come out of our universities, or we can attract folks to keep the high-paying jobs in our community, or to get people that move here have those opportunities. So we're looking at the innovation district, the comp plan, the master plan, the utility 10-year plan. We're going to be talking to the council this summer about a street maintenance plan for the neighborhoods for the use of the repurposed vision tax to make sure that we're spending those funds to get into the neighborhoods to do the overlays plus the rebuild. And so from the administration's perspective, we believe this gives the residents, this is one of the last pieces, the residents a roadmap to come in to say that Broken Arrow, as an administration, as a governing body, is that we have tentative plans to address infrastructure, to address the development, to address parks and recreation, all those things that make Broken Arrow a great place to live, work, and play. And this is really, from our perspective, even though it's a living, breathing organization, this is one of the last pieces that we need to put in place to show the community that we are trying to address what's important to them, is that is transportation, that is parks, that is public safety, stormwater, and once again, the public facilities, quality of life. I wish I could give Scott Esmond the other $10 million that we had, but $19 million over 10 years to upgrade our parks, expand our parks, a new park. I mean, there's a pretty comprehensive package here that we're trying to make sure that we touch every part of town and we do it in a very methodical way, in a very cost-effective way, and to meet your objective of making sure that it is not a tax increase.
Well, to that end, I noticed on down at the bottom on transportation, lines 8 and then 7 and 8, both coming below the cut line. And will those be able to be incorporated into our regular road maintenance relative to the increased sales tax, that sort of thing, to still address, because some of the downtown roads are pretty challenging?
We had a
Does that question make sense?
the answer is yes.
Okay.
The city's going to receive, we estimate, about $3.6 million a year from the repurposed vision tax. And we had a multi-hour meeting about a month ago to look at how we implement the use of those funds. And we asked Mr. Schwab to come out with a recommendation on how much materials do we need to be able to do in-house projects. And also, first and foremost, to look at where is our talent and what should we be doing and what should we be contracting out. And so we came up with a plan that included making sure that we have funds for materials and supplies to do in-house work. Then we had funds to make sure that we do the road stripings, to make sure we have the proper markings for safety. We also talked about making sure that we had funds for signalization. There is funds in the package for signal upgrades or additional signals, but we wanted to make sure that we left the flexibility in there that when we have to upgrade the signals to the flashing yellows, or if we need a new signal, like there's 2 or 3 locations in town where there is the need for a signal. Plus, we just notified the Department of Transportation that we want to do a master plan study of Highway 51 and looking at the potential development in Wagner County there, where Zico is, for example, and there's a couple of areas that have potential for development, to make sure that that's a safe corridor to move. So there's going to be a need for additional signal there. And so we've left some capacity, and I believe we've got it down to where we should have about $2.5 million from the vision tax to be able to spend each year on the neighborhood rehabilitation programs. And if you combine that with the $25 million that's being proposed in the package, we'd like to go ahead and do some revenue bonds to be able to get caught up on those projects over a 5-year note, and then actually continue that to have the money up front, award the contracts for the concrete and the asphalt each year for the street department to manage those contracts, and then do in-house work with a focus on concrete, the sidewalks, the curbs, the slab replacements in the development. And so to answer your question is that we have a lot of catching up to do, obviously, because we had very limited funds. But when you think about over 10 years, $25 million from the bond, and then another $25 million from the tax, we could be spending approximately $50 million for the rehabilitation and maintenance of our streets, in addition to the funds that are in here for the road widenings and the intersection improvements to actually move traffic. So I know you asked for a short answer. I gave you
No, I didn't ask for a short answer, I asked for an answer. And so that would include the downtown streets?
Yes.
That some of which...
And a long way around, yes. There's money directly in there for downtown streets, but basically First Street, Ash Street, those are both are on the plan, and we will continue to work off of the report with the pavement index condition, and we'll be using the funds from the tax to go in, because a lot of those streets are at the point where they can't be mill and overlaid anymore. We're going to have to go back in, and we're going to have to go down and from the base and rebuild them correctly so we can get another 20 years or more life out of them.
And to that point, because I asked the question about do we have bridge rehabilitation in this, and Kenny's response was we're pretty well caught up, but over the course of the 10-year period, we anticipate that there will be bridges that we may have to do some rehabilitation. So this isn't just about fixing things today or tomorrow. It's anticipating over the 10-year period that there are issues we need to address, and we've got them built into the bond package. So.
Any more questions?
Then next Monday night, the focus for Monday night, once again, where the mayor will welcome everybody, then each council member will have an opportunity to address the crowd that we hopefully will have a large crowd. And then it's going to fall upon me to present a PowerPoint. And in that PowerPoint, I'm going to talk about the goals and objectives of this package, specifically discussing the 4 or 5 goals with the objectives of what we're trying to accomplish with this package. And I'm going to start it off, a little preview, to talk about what the voters have already approved and the fact that we have a lot of orange cones around town right now, and that's still coming when you look at the projects that the voters approved and where they are. Just to remind folks that their previous approvals have allowed us to do Lynn Lane and to plan for a number of other streets and communities. So really, we're asking them to continue that momentum that they've already supported these initiatives to continue to build with the infrastructure. And then we'll talk a little bit about the package. And then after that, then we'll go back into the Department of Transportation open house style, where we will actually have large Excel spreadsheets up that actually show what's above the line and what's below. We'll take that final impact, and then we'll update everything and bring it back to the council in May.
Let me ask a final question then. We started out at 281 million and was down to 222 million. You said we was going to try to get down to 211, and then you started talking about that some of those different projects could be funded by other sources. So the bond package, do we still need to get down to the 211?
Yes, we do.
So we're going to have a special meeting to decide on which ones we're going to cut out? Is that correct?
Actually, what I was thinking about doing, and council, we can certainly adjust accordingly, is there's several projects right now I can tell you that I'm not going to recommend. I've talked to some of the community groups that understand that this is not the right time to be going forward with those projects. And so I'm pretty confident that, I can think of $7 million to $8.5 million that I could eliminate immediately. However, I want to make sure we have the final public's input. And so what I plan to give to the council is the package. And my thought was to present the package, just like we're having this discussion, to give it to you the first meeting in May 1st, for any final comments, because we're running a concurrent path where we're actually starting to put together the bond language that was specifically what's going to be voted on. And so that my thought was May 1st, which is just a week later, is to come back in this exact same form, Councilman.
Well, that was my question. Who are we looking for that other $11 million? And you think you found most of it, which is good.
Yes, sir.
But that does let the public know they need to be at this meeting for input, this final meeting, because we're still looking to reduce it $11 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, we're going to do a robocall Thursday. Krista Flash is going to coordinate a robocall reminding folks of the meeting. We've been flooding social media. Councilmember Wimpy, she did the Take 5 that went out last night, talking about the importance of being there. And then we're going to hit everyone. We'll send out a press release. And so I think we've saturated the city. And when we do the robocall later this week, I would anticipate that we would have as many, if not more, than what we had at each one of the sessions that we held in February.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Michael.